So good evening, and I hope everyone is doing well. It's great to be back. My name's Helen Avery, and you are here with me on Slooh. I'm seeing that an error has occurred. Let us see what's going on. Okay, great. I think Paul just told me it's all good. I'm not sure why it's saying there's an error on my Slooh screen. I hope it can sort out, because I want to see what we can see tonight, because the cameras are open, which is amazing. But for some reason, I'm just not seeing a main show picture. And I will wait. Maybe my trusty companion can help me out on that one. He will. Otherwise, maybe it's just my computer. But the cameras are open, which is wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. I mean, the telescopes are open. As you can see, if you look on the Canary All Sky, if you're over in the Space Situation room, you will see a beautiful starry night over in the Canary Islands. So if you are over on YouTube, then I encourage you to come over to slooh.com and take a look at this beautiful, beautiful starry night. So Paul says all is well on his, and it's just mine. So who knows what's happening on my one. There we go. It all seems to be back. So great. So here we are, as I mentioned, on the All Sky. And if you're looking at the All Sky, oh my goodness, you can see Ursa Major, the Big Dipper right there. And one of the wonderful things about Virgo, which we're going to talk tonight, is that you can find your way there by using Ursa Major. And the first object, if you're keen to get on with the telescopes, in the Canary Wide Field and Ultra Wide Field, yes, we have Spica. This is the brightest star in Virgo, so I didn't want you to miss this while it's there. It's going to be on Canary 2 for the next 10 minutes, but this is the wonderful Spica. And there is the well-known saying, follow the arc to Arcturus and speed on to Spica. That's how you can kind of find your way to Spica. And what that means, if you're looking at the Canary All Sky, is that you trace a line through the handle of the Big Dipper and kind of arc all the way over to Arcturus, which is in Boötes, which I'm looking forward to. We'll talk about at some point. And then you speed on to Spica by just following that down, and you'll find Spica, known in Old England as the Virgin's Spike. And we're going to talk about this Virgin this evening, this Virgo, this beautiful woman with wings and holding a sheaf of wheat. So Spica, if you're getting a close-up look, it's a B-type dwarf. It's about 260 light years away, and it's kind of blue-white. So we're getting a lot of the white, or that's how I'm seeing it on my computer right now. So sort of keeping an eye out for some blues. And we talked about this, so it's been a while since we got together. But last time we talked about Leo, and I mentioned the diamond of Virgo. If you were with us this winter, we looked at the winter circle, which is stars, bright stars you can see in the sky during winter that form kind of a circle. Some people call it the winter hexagon. But the diamond of Virgo is another one of these great sort of collections of stars that forms a shape. And Spica is one of them. We looked at Denebula in Leo, then it's Cor Caroline, Canis Venatici, and Arcturus in Boötes form this diamond of Virgo. So if you're a Slooh member, it's always fun, I think, to kind of set up a mission and for all four, and then you kind of like put them together, maybe as a mosaic or something, into your diamond. It's a fun thing to do. Or sometimes called this. There's the spring triangle. So we had the winter circle, the spring triangle, and that's Arcturus, Spica, and Regulus, although sometimes people talk about, there's if you're on YouTube, on the main page I just put a picture of our lovely constellation, but some people sort of say it's Regulus and some say it's the nebula. So I'm just thought I'd pop that up so you can see what I'm talking about. So if you're on the main page, if you're not, I'm just going to tell you, I'm showing you the spring triangle, of which Spica is one of those beautiful stars. And Spica, I was reading about the first peoples. To many of the first peoples, the brightest stars in the sky were considered chiefs, chiefs of the whatever I won't say tribe, but the peoples were up in the sky. And Spica is actually called Wayanesh. So that's good to know. But I just wanted to, there's a really lovely story about these chiefs in the sky, so I just thought I'd put this up. And this is in Stars of the First People, by Dorcas Miller, who I've talked about before. And there is this enormous constellation for the first peoples, the Zuni in particular, that you can't even sort of see in one go in the sky. It's just, and it's called like Chief of the Night. And Spica, as you can see if you're on the main page, is the chief's elbow, which I just thought was so lovely. And Arcturus is the chief's shoulder, and Antares is the chief's forearm, chief's hand is some of the stars in Sagittarius. And you can see that triangle up there on that picture is the chief's heart. So just a fraction of this enormous chief constellation, which wouldn't that be a great mission to get all of those stars at some point of this chief. So I just wanted to read you this short section about that. In his unpublished field notes of research with the Zuni, John Harrington describes a huge constellation called Chief of the Night. He says this is the most majestic constellation ever reported from any tribe of Indians, as far as we know. He was obviously writing this a long time ago. It is a gigantic human figure, even bigger than the whole visible sky, for its head had already set in the west or had been obscured by clouds lying near the horizon, while its heart was pointed out in mid-heaven, lying in the Milky Way, and its legs were said to extend beyond the horizon in the east. And it says here, Harrington viewed this and other Zuni constellations with Nachapani, a Zuni worker in Chaco Canyon, early in the summer of 1929. And sadly, his notes don't fully identify this Chief of the Night. We don't know his legs. But just another way of looking at how we see the stars in the sky. So in this case, for the first peoples, and particularly the Zuni, they were parts of this chief, and for others, they were chiefs on their own. So I just thought that was kind of cool. So let's pop back to our beautiful picture of Virgo. And if you're looking through the telescopes, which I really hope you are, oh goodness, the blue has come through in Spica. I just popped that. Fantastic. I'm so glad we got to see the blue. If you're looking through 3, it would be on your tabs. But over in the Canary Deep Sky, if you happen to pop over there, we have the first of what's going to be many galaxies this evening, because there is the Virgo Cluster, and we're going to talk about that as we go along. This is M87. If you're looking at, it would be tab 4, Canary Deep Sky. Excuse me, it's a supergiant elliptical galaxy, so it just looks kind of round. It looks a bit like a star, I guess, in this particular picture, this capture through the telescope. But it's one of the most massive galaxies in the local universe, and is notable for a large population of globular clusters. Apparently it contains about 12,000 of them, compared to the 150, 200 that are orbiting the Milky Way. Messier discovered it in 1781, and apparently it's the second brightest galaxy within the northern Virgo cluster. So I get some confused information. I don't know about you, if you find this, and I've talked about this before that whenever I'm looking for facts about a galaxy or a star, it's just such a wide variation of how large they are and how far they are they the brightest or not the brightest. But from what I gather, it's about 53 million light years from Earth. What else can I tell you about this one? It's at the core is a supermassive black hole, and this one's particularly known. M87 is known because of its radio waves. Actually, that's what it's well known for. And if you are doing Dr. Paige Godfrey's tuning fork of galaxies, this is a good one to do because it's an EOP galaxy, or E0P, I guess. So it's an elliptical galaxy that displays no flattening, and the P indicates a peculiar galaxy that we've talked about before and we'll talk about a bit later. But now we are zipping along, oh my god, to the Sombrero Galaxy. So this is so fantastic. To me, this looks like, I don't know if you know what a hang drum is, but they're kind of all the rage at the moment, especially if you hang out in yoga studios. There's a lot of people playing the hang drum. This to me reminds me of a hang drum, but it is actually the Sombrero Galaxy, which is an elliptical galaxy. It's about 31 million light years from Earth, and it's like this sort of large dust lane, and then the bulge, that bulge in the middle, that kind of obviously make this look a bit like a sombrero. Someone thought at some stage, pre-hang drum. And it's very easily visible with amateur telescopes. So if you have an amateur telescope, it would be a fun thing to go and look at. And some again say this is the brightest galaxy. So who knows? But it's also very popular with the pros, the professional astronomers, because it has this like really unusually large central bulge. And this very prominent dust lane. And also another supermassive black hole. The largest of black holes, as the name probably implies. Also a Muse song, supermassive black hole. Apparently on the order of hundreds of thousands to billions of solar masses. So super fun. I'm just going to check out the view through, wow, the Canary Wide Field. It's like one of those flying saucers sweets. Did you ever have those that were filled with sherbet? Wow, that's amazing. Great. And then if you go pop on 3 Canary Ultra Wide Field, it sort of comes across as sort of yellowish. Just fantastic. Oh, I'm really, really excited that spring is here. Where the clocks went forward. And that means hopefully no snow in the Canary Islands, and we'll get these beautiful clear skies for all of our times together, and hopefully during the weeks when you set up your mission. So I'm so thrilled. And Virgo is such a lovely constellation for us to look at around spring. It's actually most prominent in the sky in the Northern Hemisphere in May, but we can start to see it in March. So I wanted to share a story while we are gazing at the Sombrero Galaxy about the constellation Virgo. And if you happen to be watching this later, I feel it only fair to share on YouTube the Sombrero Galaxy that Juan Pablo captured with our Slooh cameras. I keep saying cameras, through telescope, but he managed to capture this image, and it is a corker. So if you are watching this later on and you can't see through what we're seeing through the telescopes right now live, then at least you have this to feast your eyes on while I share this story. So brace yourselves. So one of the most sort of familiar stories, and Virgo has been associated with Madonna, Astrea, which we'll talk about later. The Egyptians saw Isis. In India, they saw Kanya, the mother of Krishna. The Hindus saw Kauni, the maiden. Persians knew her as Kosha, and the Hebrews knew her as Bethula. Always this woman associated, as you imagine, with fertility, because she arrives in the spring when the fields are going to be ploughed and prepared, and then the sun goes into her in September when the harvest is due. So she's seen as this whole sort of, she brings the fertility to the land, and then she leaves really just as, you know, things start to become barren again. So across many, many cultures, she has this connection. But I wanted to share this particular story. So this is from the wonderful Susanna Hislop. I'm just stealing her story this evening, and her beautiful book, Stories in the Stars. First, there is an awakening deep in the marrow of your winter-shrunk bones, that quality of hope in the light. And then there are daffodils and evenings. Evenings, you'd forgotten that days didn't turn straight into night before you left work. Certainly felt that today when the clocks changed. I was like, my God, we have an evening. Spring has sprung. Next, these heart-speeding spring days mellow into early summer, and the whole world hovers on a heady, glorious axis. Things are no longer newborn, but are not yet fully grown. The sun is warm, but the air is still cool. Everywhere is blossom and bloom, and everything is promise, but the crops are not yet cut. Across centuries and continents, humans have known this as the time of the Virgin. Fertile, plump, and ripe for the plucking. So, of course, this is the season when, if you look up to the stars, you will see one in the sky. This beautiful Virgin holding an ear of wheat. Some people have called it a sheaf of corn. And held aloft in the night sky by angelic wings, our beautiful Virgo. So the story, so there, to the Romans, it was the story of Ceres, and then Prosepine was the name of the daughter. But I'm going to tell you the Greek story. So Demeter is Ceres, and Persephone is the daughter. And this is the story. We are in a meadow in Sicily. And Persephone, the daughter of Ceres, or Demeter in this instance, Persephone, the daughter of Demeter, is skimming her fingers over the long grass. Occasionally she picks a flower. Occasionally the breeze catches a strand of her hair. And bending down to smell a narcissus in bloom, she feels the earth crack beneath her feet, and she is sucked all the way down into Hades, the underworld. She doesn't return that evening or the next, and her mother Demeter searches for her furiously, racked by worry. Since Demeter is the goddess of grain, her grief is felt in the fields. The crops wither. She asks the great bear if she saw anything in the night, but only the sun god Helios witnessed what happened. When Demeter hears that Hades, the king of the underworld, has stolen his niece and taken the virgin as his spoil, she fumes her way to Persephone's father Zeus and forces him to rescue her. The cunning Hades, however, king of the underworld, now plays a cruel trick. Like all good girls, Persephone knows that if you are ever abducted and taken to the underworld, you must not touch a morsel of food, or you can never again reside in the land of the living. And not one crumb has so far touched the reluctant bride's lips. But as news reaches her and her uncle that she is about to be freed, Hades prepares her a farewell feast. Not when he offers her the finest of loaves or the sweetest of wine is she tempted, until finally he hands her a pomegranate. She cannot resist and eats just 6 of its succulent seeds. And with those 6 small transgressions, she seals her fate. She will have to spend a third of the year in the underworld, and as winter comes, the earth will mourn and the crops will die until she returns each year in the spring. just such a beautiful story. And you can see amazing pieces of art that show this kind of the fall of Persephone, where she's tempted. It's almost, you know, think about temptation stories in our religious stories. It's this temptation, and I think it's so meaningful that there are 6 seeds that she takes, you know, a bit like 7, is it 7 deadly sins? I should know, and I don't. But these, it's just, you know, it's just a story that we hear over and over again. But so beautiful. So in this instance, Demeter would be Virgo. She is the goddess of fertility, goddess of the grain, and goddess of the harvest. Same as Ceres for the Romans. But there's this lovely, as I say, this lovely story, or sad, about her daughter Persephone. And I've read different reports, like maybe Persephone's down in the underground for six months, or maybe even more. Either way, she pops up again in March. So we're seeing her now. Okay, let's see. Oh my goodness, what we have got next in the telescopes. So we just had the sombrero, and now we are moving on to the eyes. Oh, just lovely. Wow, and you can really see in this, I'm on Canary Ultra Wide Field, number 3 on the tabs. And can you count how many galaxies you can see there? Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. That is unbelievable. So I'm just going to whip through the telescopes and see, we've got a closer one, Canary Wide Field. It's these 2 in the middle that are what we're looking at, the eyes. And I'm going to check on Canary Deep Sky. Fantastic. All those, look at those galaxies. I am so excited. Oh my goodness. Do you remember Coma Berenice's with all those galaxies in her hair? And here we are again with all these amazing galaxies. Just phenomenal. I'm so excited that we can see this tonight. So the eyes, I wanted to read to you, I'm kind of cheating tonight. I'm just like reading other people's stuff. But when other people do it better than you, sometimes you just got to go with that rather than recreate the wheel. So I wanted to read from to you about the eyes from Stephen James O'Meara, who you all know I love, The Secret Deep. So the eyes, by the way, are NGC 4435 and 4438. So I'm just personally popping back to number 2, Canary Wide Field, so I can get a really closer look at these eyes. So one is a barred lenticular galaxy, and the other a peculiar lenticular galaxy. If you are collecting your tuning fork. So NGC 4438 is a rather bright and obvious galaxy, says Stephen James O'Meara. And it is paired with the smaller and dimmer NGC 4435, immediately to the northwest. So for us, 4435 is the one above, and 4438 is the one below. Okay. And they make up part of Markarian's chain, which we'll talk a little bit about later. So viewed together, they are known as the eyes, which was bestowed upon them by Leland Copeland in a 1955 Sky and Telescope article for their appearance through a telescope. And some people now call them the little eyes, although they're pretty darn big. So 4438, the one at the bottom, is arguably the most fascinating, says O'Meara. At least its appearance in high-resolution images immediately captures attention, because here is a large and peculiar non-barred lenticular galaxy whose outer disk is fantastically warped and ripped into shreds. And we can see that here, you know, this sort of wispiness around it. So Houghton Arp, who O'Meara wonderfully describes as the P.T. Barnum of modern astronomy, listed this is the 120th object in his Atlas of Peculiar Galaxies. And we've touched on this briefly before, and I know that people have requested we talk a lot more about the Atlas of Peculiar Galaxies, and we will. But it's like what O'Meara describes as a photographic sideshow starring 338 extragalactic freaks. Just love it, thinking of it as a sideshow. Namely wildly deformed galaxies that pique our curiosities. So NGC 4438, the one at the bottom with the wisps, is an attraction because it is a perturbed spiral. It's 140 million light years across and seen nearly edge on. And it's the most disturbed large spiral galaxy in the Virgo cluster, and its stars are clearly disturbed, indicating a strong gravitational encounter with another galaxy. But its gas is even more disturbed than that in most gravitationally interacting systems. Something has pushed most of the gas west of the stars in the galaxy and heated it up, says Yale astronomer Geoffrey Kenny. There are two mysteries. Who did this galaxy collide with? And why is its gas so disturbed? So interestingly, you think to yourself, it must have collided with the galaxy above it, because that's its nearest one, and they seem to be this sort of pair. But the problem is that while the one we can see is wildly distorted, NGC 4438, the one above shows absolutely no effects of, or no evidence of being disturbed at all. So normally you see sort of disturbance in both. So it's a bit of a mystery here. So I just thought that was really interesting for us to just have a sort of look at, think about while we're looking at these two. Amazing, we're looking at a wildly perturbed galaxy. So I'm just going to skip through these images again and see, just keeping an eye on as other sort of the colors come out. My God, that's just amazing. I'm looking through Canary Deep Sky 4 at the minute. Wow, it's just so lovely. I'm just so happy. I have a feeling when we looked at Sombrero Galaxy, we didn't have, it was bad weather that day, I think. So I don't think we actually got to see it with our eyes. Although I know we had some wonderful member pictures. Yeah, there are these, back to our stories about a wonderful Virgo. Where was I? So there was this sort of similarity with the whole fertility story. So as I mentioned, in medieval Christians saw Virgo, the constellation, as the Madonna. Kind of interesting to me that we have this like Virgin Mary appear in the Bible, and the idea of this Virgin maiden that's like birthed spring was apparent in so many more of the sort of pagan religions and religions pre-Christianity. And Hislop sort of points out, so the Babylonians called Virgo Ishtar, or Astarte. The Egyptians associated her with Isis, the goddess of magic, motherhood and fertility, who we've talked about before. And Virgo's lights appear most brightly in the sky about this springtime, although actually it's more like May, but I guess she's sort of artistic license, when Anglo-Saxon pagans would have been offering coloured eggs to their own goddess of fertility and spring, Estrella, which we know as Easter. So placing these lovely little eggs, what they would do is they place them on graves in this like festival of rebirth. That actually is the reason we have the Christian Easter. Is because it comes from this pagan religion, and we've talked about this before. That Christianity, to really take hold, had to get the pagans on board. So a lot of the sort of dates and stuff, and the stories kind of have to sort of were inspired by those stories. Just stories we keep telling in different forms over and over again in different ways. But actually, when we look up at Virgo, we can sort of remind ourselves that when we start to see her, it's time for Easter, because here is spring. So we've got just a minute before we are leaving this wonderful sight in front of us. These beautiful eyes peering down at us in spring. And we are moving along to it's a surprise. It is the Butterfly Galaxy. Hopefully is emerging now. So I realise I'm leaving people wildly hanging if they're watching later on YouTube. So I'm just going to change the image on the main page so they can get a sense that we've been talking about these wonderful galaxies. And this is the Markarian chain. This was kindly shared, by Keith, one of our members. Look at such hard work he's done here. It's beautiful. And we'll talk about this a little bit later, but I'm going to leave that up on the main page for now. So let's have a look at our butterfly galaxies. Again, look at this. I'm looking at 2 Canary Widefield. Oh my goodness. What a wonderful, wonderful view. And everything feels right with the world. We're going into spring, thank God, in the Northern Hemisphere, even though I think we've got snow forecast this week in the northeast of the United States. But here we go. The butterfly is great. So I'm looking on 4 Canary Deep Sky, and here they are in the middle, and you can see they're interacting, and that is why they're sometimes called the Siamese twins, or as we're calling them, the Butterfly Galaxies. So these are unbarred spiral galaxies, about 60 million light years away. And I just love that these are in the process of colliding and merging with each other. So we've talked about this before, about our own Milky Way galaxy will ultimately collide with the Andromeda galaxy. And here we're getting to see sort of the beginning stages of what that may look like. So just lovely. And I'm going to just move through the telescopes again. I'm looking at 2 Canary Widefield, and we can see a little bit more of the structure of our butterfly galaxy. Oh, it's just so great. So fantastic. Gotta love a galaxy. I'm always, personally, I really love a globular cluster. They're kind of my go-tos, but I do love a galaxy. It reminds me of I went to Angkor Wat many years ago, and after like 2 days of looking at temples, I really was just templed out. I just was like, don't give me any more temples. I'm kind of done. And it seems so ungrateful, but sometimes, I don't know about you, I mean, I guess if you're listening, you're an astronomy nut. But I do sometimes, once you've looked at 40 odd galaxies, it can be a bit, oh my Lord. But don't forget the Messier Marathon next weekend. So lots of wonderful, wonderful objects to look at back to back. We'll talk a bit more about that later as well. So yes, the Butterfly Galaxy, here we are, and I hope you can enjoy it and maybe get a shot of it. Apologies if you're hearing later, I don't have an image for you. I kind of just wanted to focus on these live images tonight. But wanted to share another story. So Virgo, our Virgin, is often also associated with Astrea. So actually on the main page, I'm going to click back to that original picture we had, our Virgo picture. So goodbye Markarian chain, and we'll come back to you later if we've got time. So here she is. So you can see her if you're on the main page with her wings. She's holding the corn in her hand. Spica means wheat sheaf. Sometimes she's shown as having corn, but Spica is within this, and Spica means ear of wheat. So Latin for ear of wheat. So that's always, you know, when you speed to Spica, you know that you're hitting this particular part of the constellation. And then she seems to be holding something in her other hand. I'm not really quite sure. Maybe it's part of... actually, I'm blanking on that, so I don't know. But if you remember, you can see the nebula at the top of that. This was actually part of the lion's tail of Leo, and then it sort of also got shifted into becoming part of Coma Berenice's a little bit. So it's sort of not always stayed with Virgo, this particular part. Nor have her wings. In many depictions of the constellation Virgo, you won't see her with wings. But if you're talking about the story of Astrea, then absolutely she has wings. And it is a bonkers story, and it's really inspiring. And if you are a woman listening to this, I kind of see Astrea as like the goddess of the women's movement, for reasons that may become clear a bit later. So Astrea was the goddess of innocence in Greek mythology and daughter of the Titans. So Astreus was the god of dusk and Eos was the god of dawn. Just beautiful. And her name meant star maiden. And the story goes that she was on Earth alongside humans during the golden age of man. And we haven't gone into a lot of detail about the ages, and maybe we will down the line. But there are seen to be these different ages. The Mayans believed, the yogis and Hindus believe that there is different ages. If you've ever read the Mahabharata, that sort of talks about the changing of ages, the yugas. So it's not sort of a new thing, but there is this beautiful story about Astrea, and I will read it to you. And this one comes courtesy of Julius Stahl. So I'm going to share it with you. Okay. So Astrea is sometimes seen as the goddess of justice, holding scales in one hand and a sword in the other. And the scales come from the fact that she's near Libra, the constellation Libra, which is the scales. And it's said that Astrea used these scales to weigh the good and bad of men. And long ago, she mixed with mortals. She was the goddess of justice and administered just law. This unspoiled golden race of men in the golden age did not know feuds or wars. It was the golden era. They obtained all their needs from the soil, which they tilled themselves with oxen and plough, and no foreign ships brought goods from far away. All was peaceful, and everything was shared equally according to the needs of people. But then the silver race of men gradually appeared on Earth, and some refer to this as the Iron Age. Although the race was slightly inferior to the golden race, Astrea still visited them, but more rarely, and usually to tell them about their crimes. Her voice was stern, and she had no gentle word for them. And when the silver race died out, there was created a brazen race, men who fashioned swords and weapons to conduct wars on each other. Astrea loathed this race and decided to leave the earth and flew off to heaven to take her place where we can see her nowadays. And this is why we can sometimes see her depicted with wings like an angel. Just awesome. She is so inspiring. She was very closely linked to the goddess Dike, or Dike, protector of fair judgment, which again was the scales. So there's this sort of friendship between them. And actually, Astrea is often seen as the, what do you call it? Like the symbol or the representative or for lesbians, actually. The Astrea Lesbian Foundation for Justice, for example, it's called. But there is this myth that Astrea will return to Earth one day, and then it will be the rise of the goddess, and women will come into power in the world, and they'll bring with it, probably not initially, and a utopia that existed during the Golden Age, and will bring an end to human suffering. And then the cycle will start again. Maybe women will become, overbearing and violent, and then off we go on another bunch of ages again, and Astrea will flap her wings and go back to the sky. So interesting. I just thought we were looking at the Butterfly Galaxies, and then here she is with her wings. But yeah, she became really popular again in the European Renaissance, and was kind of associated with the spirit of renewal of culture. So she comes up a lot, actually. Every time people say we're entering a golden age, you guarantee in art there'll be pictures of Astrea, and we're seeing it happen now, actually. Some people are saying it's a whole new age, if the planet is shifting into a whole new age, and so Astrea is kind of back on the minds of a lot of people. Queen Elizabeth I, actually, as the Virgin Queen, was thought to be reigning over the golden age, and there was a lot of art around Astrea at that time. She was referred to by Shakespeare, and there's a sense that when women tap into Astrea's energy, that the sort of then Astrea will return to Earth, as I said. And she's also referred to by Shakespeare. So a real leader for women, this one. But let's get back to these telescopes, and what are we having a look at here? Let me check the time. Right, this is M49. It's an elliptical galaxy, as you can probably see. Sometimes I call them blob galaxies. That's the technical term. So I'm just going to skim through the telescopes and have a little look at them. Oh, that's great. I'm looking through 3. Just love that. And then 4. Fantastic. So we're having sort of a mini Messier Marathon over the next 15 minutes. Or the next, 15 minutes, I think. 10 minutes, 15 minutes. We're going to do M49, M58, M60. Which always amuses me, because when I Google them to find out more about them, it always comes up with like guns, which is ironic. So M49 said elliptical galaxy. It's about 56 million light years away. And on average, the globular clusters of M49 are about 10 billion years old. It was actually the first member of the Virgo cluster of galaxies to be discovered, and is said to be the most luminous, but we've heard that before. And it is interacting with a dwarf irregular galaxy. I wonder if that is what we can see. Either this, I'm not sure, actually. I wish Paul was here to tell me, but it's either the one under it or this tiny one next to it that you can see. I don't know, so I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that. But it's interacting with this dwarf irregular galaxy. But I wanted to talk to you about the Virgo cluster. So it's this cluster of galaxies that is obviously in the constellation Virgo, and it comprises, like, it's mad, it's like people think up to like 2,000 member galaxies. Unbelievable. And the cluster forms like the heart of the much larger Virgo supercluster, of which the local group, which contains the Milky Way, is an outlying member. So what else can I tell you? So Many of the brighter galaxies in this Virgo cluster, they were discovered in the late 1770s and early 1780s, and therefore it's sort of included in Charles Messier's catalogue. Although, you know, as we've talked about before, and I know I've heard Dr. Paige Godfrey talk about this, they were described by Messier as nebulae. And it wasn't really until the 1920s that they were known to be not nebulae, but galaxies. So all this going on in Virgo, which is just fantastic. And as I showed you Keith's picture earlier, that's actually the Markarian chain. So the Markarian chain is a stretch of galaxies that forms part of the Virgo cluster. And viewed from Earth, it kind of looks like they're in this like smoothly curved line. And it was, if you're wondering who Markarian was, he was an Armenian astrophysicist, Benjamin Markarian, who apparently discovered their common motion in the early 1960s. So while we are, we've just switched, it's 9:45, we're now on M58. So I'll leave you to just have a look at that, and I just wanted to change up the images for those looking later, because I found a really lovely one of the Virgo cluster. Let's have a look. Just going to leave our beautiful lady with the wheat behind. Here we go. Looks like it's on its side, this picture. I'm not sure what has happened there. But this, this is a deep image of the Virgo cluster. Look at that. And if you're wondering what these blacked out things are, they are very bright stars, so not to detract from the galaxies. They've just been removed from the image. This was taken by Chris Mihos and his colleagues using the Burrell-Schmidt telescope. But what a treat. North, by the way, is up and east to the left. But I just thought this was just wonderful, just to see this busyness, like bees all together in this cluster. And then I'm going to pop this back on the Markarian chain. So you can see this kind of art, sort of like, yeah, it looks like a bit like a chain. And Keith is very, very diligently listed all of the objects there. So just wonderful. But where are we on our telescopes? Pop back. Great. Okay. So M58 is an intermediate barred spiral galaxy. So let's see if we can get a good look at that. So I'm getting, oh yes, it's coming through onto the Canary wide field. Wonderful. Oh my goodness, look at that. You can see the bar through the middle, and then the sort of I'm not very technical, but the rings coming off around it. Oh my goodness, that is amazing. That is really amazing. Fantastic. And this is about 68 million light years away. Discovered by Messier, although he didn't know it was a galaxy. 1779. And is one of only 4 Barrel spiral galaxies that appear in Messier's catalogue. Okay. So next Saturday, if you don't know this, it's the Messier Marathon, and you can find out about it on slooh.com in the live casts. And if you've been listening to astronomer Paul Cox, you'll know he's been sort of prepping for this for a while and geeing up people. So it's this huge marathon, obviously, of time all through the night, where the telescopes will be pointed at as many Messier objects as we can get in. So I really recommend to, goodness, you know, God willing, clear skies, but really recommend that you come and join us next Saturday night. I think he and I will be having a chat during that whole event as well, just riffing on some of the amazing galaxies and other objects and clusters and whatnots that are going to be seen. So it's going to be really, really exciting. So definitely recommend joining then. Wow, Okay. I'm just keeping an eye on 2, just getting more detail on the bar. Oh my God, just amazing. And then next we have coming up is M60. Here we go. Let's see. Let's see what this one looks like. Oh, nice. I'm on Canary Widefield 2. It's very near M59, this one, as we can see. So I'm just checking out the other Canary Ultra Widefield in the Canary Deep Sky. Oh my God, it's so amazing. Okay, right. So as you can see, it is, do you know which one it is? Yes, it is an elliptical galaxy. And this one again is about 55 million light years away. All kind of in the same ballpark. And it's part of this pair of galaxies, as you can see them there, with NGC 4647. So M59, I don't know which one is M59. So I'm going to refer to Keith's arc. Do they appear in there? No, I don't think they do. Let me switch images on the main page, because I do have an image I can share that shows the location of some of these galaxies, if you bear with me. Is it that one? Yes, it is. And you can see M60 roughly. This just shows you the location if you're looking, if you're wondering where they all are. This shows you whereabouts in the constellation the galaxy cluster is, and you can see M60 there. Okay, but let's have another look back at our galaxy. So M60 and the nearby M59 were actually discovered by Johann Gottfried Köhlerin in 1779 during observations of a comet in the same part of the sky. And Charles Messier listed both in the Messier catalogue about 3 days after Köhler's discovery. So he claimed it. Messier claimed them, even though it was Johann Gottfried Köhler. But here is the lovely M60. So while we're just having a look at this for a couple more minutes, I'm just going to remind you that when I do these constellation stories, I put up a post on the discussions board and invite people to comment about their favourite things within the constellation that we're going to see. So maybe we can talk about it. Sometimes people share images, which is always helpful because it's beautiful to see the capabilities of Slooh's telescopes, just phenomenal. It's also wonderful to see how members put mosaics together and polish up the images. It's just great. And also to hear their stories and suggestions. And I usually put up like a list of suggested other missions that you could, if you wanted just to really dive deep into the constellation, if you wanted to dive deep into Virgo, you could just, I usually just put up a list of all the other things you could see. But you'll see from what members add of what they like Mario loves double stars, and there's a double star, I think it's Gamma Virginis, which I didn't have time for this evening. So they're wonderful suggestions. So I recommend that when we're having one of these shows, you could pop in and afterwards or before and be part of that conversation if there are particular things you want to see. I'm not always very good at posting it before I've booked the telescope missions. So just a heads up that I'm going to be looking at Ursa Major. I don't know about next week, because if we are rained out at all for the Messier Marathon, it will happen on the Sunday instead, so it might take up this time. And I don't want to be in the middle of that, because that's just something so magical. So I don't know about next Sunday, but certainly the Sunday after, we're going to take Ursa Major in 2. So if you are really keen to see something in Ursa Major, a particular object, I'm letting you know now, you can start a thread on the discussion board, just call it Ursa Major, and tell me what you want to see. And then that way, before I book the telescopes for the missions, I'll have an idea of what you might be interested in looking at. So we can get it in, because it's always great. Yeah, but also just, have a look on the thread. There's a really awesome shot. I'm blanking on who put it up, but it captures a satellite within the constellation of Virgo, and it's really neat. So that's kind of fun. So we're going to end this evening with 61 Virginis. It is a star. Not a bright star, not one of the chiefs, but I'm really excited about it. It's a G-type main sequence star, and I just kind of wanted to show you this. It's slightly less massive than the Sun. In fact, it's really similar to the Sun, which is why it is kind of special. And I think I only booked this for Canary 2. If I'm right. So yeah, you'll just see it through that. And it's about 27.9 light years away, and it is, as I say, almost identical to the Sun. It's got about 95% of the Sun's mass, 98% of the radius, 85% of the luminosity. The abundance of elements is also similar to the Sun. The star apparently has like 95% of the Sun's proportions of elements other than hydrogen and helium, which are important. But it's much older than the Sun. It's about 6.1 to 6.6 billion years of age, and is spinning with a leisurely projected rotational velocity of about 4 kilometers a second at the equator. And what's cool about it is, it's cool anyway, but there's it has a super Earth. So that's like that's if you don't know what a super Earth is, it's like an extrasolar planet, an exoplanet with that's kind of similar to Earth in size or a mass. So it's a mass higher than Earth, but substantially below the masses of, like, Uranus and Neptune. And it only refers to the mass of the planet, by the way, being similar to Earth. It does not imply anything about the surface conditions or habitability. So it kind of gets you really excited, like, oh my God, here's this beautiful star we're looking at, and it has a super Earth. Could it have life on it? No. I don't think so. But I just thought it was like really neat to look at a star that is so similar to our Sun, and kind of, I don't know, maybe this super Earth had its golden age and its silver age and all the other ages, and then and finally ended its cycle. Or maybe it's getting ready to be fertile and bear all the wonderful seasons and weather that we have on our own Earth. Who knows? But I just thought it was a nice note to end on. So that's kind of it from me, and thanks for being with me, if you've been with me tonight, as we've looked at Virgo, the constellation. One for the ladies, perhaps. I know it certainly was inspired by it. I'm just going to bring her back up there. So let's say next time I'm back, and I'll keep you posted. I'm on Twitter, but also you can catch me on the discussions board. If you've got something in mind you want to see for Ursa Major, you can always drop it in there. Give me a heads up. Otherwise, we're going to take that in 2 parts, because it's so many stories from different cultures, and we'll explore First Peoples, and I did some research about the Inuits and what they saw in Ursa Major, so I'm really excited to share that, as well as all the usual Greek and Egyptian and Roman stories that we know. So I didn't see Dr. Paige Godfrey's livecast up this week on our livecast page, so either keep checking on that if you're interested in doing the intro to Astro this week, but I could be mistaking it. Maybe she's taking a break or off or something. But of course it's the Messier Marathon next week, and Paul Cox will be with you on Friday night as well, as a sort of juicing up and prep. So it's very, very exciting. So take a look on the website if you want to join with that. Otherwise, happy spring if you're in the Northern Hemisphere. We're finally coming out of it. Yeah, I hope that means clearer skies for us all, so we get to gaze up at all these amazing objects. Just wonderful. So thanks very much, and good night all.